Right guys, welcome back. This is the last generator script. For this, you're going to want to set up 3 empty game objects. As you can see, I've got 3 here. I'm just going to move them to there, make sure they're all within the screen. There we go, we can see there. You may have come from the last one where we did the kind of randomly picking between 3 spawn points, kicking out 1 object. This is pretty much exactly the same with one slight difference. You may have not come from that video, so I'm not really gonna refer back to it too much, just in case. So all I've done since the original video where we did the hazard movement is I've made a prefab out of this object. What I'm going to suggest now is, because what we're going to do is we're going to make an object. We're going to make 3 spawn points so that it randomly spawns from 3 different spawn points, but it also randomly picks between 3 different objects. So it's constantly random. I'm just going to make 2 copies of this prefab, and just in here I'm going to attempt to change the colour a little bit, see what kind of colour we get in here. Oh, there we go. So this one should be red now. If we change this one, I don't know what we're going to change this to. This one should be like a funky green colour. There we go. So it won't update automatically in here. It's a little bit funny sometimes, but we can see that one's yellow. We can see down here. That one's red. That one's green. So you also want to set up them 3 spawn points that I just said before, and once you've got that, create an empty game object. Make sure that it's centered to 0, and then we want to call this generator object. Also make sure, if you're in the last video, you might have known that some of my objects were slightly offset, so to fix that you just need to always make sure that these are set to 0 or there'll be an offset on the object, but don't worry about that. So go into your scripts folder, create a C# script. What I'm going to call mine, I'm going to call it spawn generator, and because I've got 2 already, I'm going to call it spawn generator 3. Nice and easy. If you want, you can assign this to this already. You don't need to. It's got nothing on there at the minute. So double click it, open it up in here, and we will start coding. So to start with, we'll need to start with, oh god, is it 7? I think it's 7 variables. So let's put these in. If you watch any of the other spawn generators, a lot of these will be familiar. So to start with, we're going to have a public float, which will be spawn cooldown. So what this is the time between spawns, obviously. Next one, we're going to do a public game object, and we're going to have a open square bracket, close square bracket, and we're going to call this hazards. And what this means is it's just a game object, but if we've got that there, it turns it into an array list, so we are allowed to put more than 1 object into that, so assign it slightly differently. We're going to do another one of these, public game object, open square bracket, close square bracket. This one's going to be called spawn points. Exactly the same again, it's going to have a list of different spawn points. Under here, we're going to set a private function, or private variable should I say, and this is going to be an integer. We're going to call this hazard, I can't spell today, hazard index, and underneath this, private int again, spawn index. And if you're completely new to this index system, because this is a list, we need to be able to figure out which object's which, and we do this via an index, so each object is assigned a number. Right, the last 2 are trying to figure out what the current point is. Because it's going to pick randomly, it needs to assign what the current object that's been picked is. So we're going to have a private game object. This is going to be current hazard, and another private game object, which, as you've probably already guessed by now, will be current spawn point. So that's that start. There we go. They're all the functions, they're all the variables we're going to use What I'm also going to do, I'm going to get rid of this update function. We don't need it. I'm going to change the start function to be an awake function, just because I prefer to use awake for this kind of stuff. And delete that line as well, me as well. So we're going to put a function in. We're going to put our spawn function in. This is going to be the bit that makes, it's going to be where the magic happens essentially. So if we go with void, which is obviously the word for function, call this spawn, open bracket, close bracket, open curly braces, and close them again. Put a little bit of space in between there, obviously by just pressing enter. So before we do anything, we need to figure out which object it's going to spawn. So we do this, I'm going to start with my hazards first. So hazard index equals random dot range. So what this is doing is this is going to pick a random number from a set of numbers. We haven't told it which numbers yet, so it's going to be 0, which is the minimum. So the minimum it can be is, bear in mind these objects get broken into an index from 0 till whatever, you know, if you've got 5 in there it's probably 0 to 4. So that's what we're doing. So 0 is always going to be the minimum. But because we don't know how many objects we're going to have and we might want to change it, we don't want to put a number in here. What we're going to put in is we're going to put in hazards, which is obviously what we set our list to, dot length. So this is the maximum amount of hazards. So that's what we're saying there, from that to that. So underneath, we need to do exactly the same with our spawn index, for our spawn index. So I'm just going to do that very quickly. Equals random dot range, open bracket, and obviously instead of being hazards dot length, this is going to be spawn points dot length. So there we go, we're nearly there. So now we've figured out, right, we found out, we've picked a random one from there. So we've done that, which is good. We now need to set our hazards and our spawn point, the current ones that we set just here. So what I'm going to do, current hazard equals hazards, and then in square brackets, hazard index, close the bracket, under here, current spawn point equals spawn points, which obviously are these two here, square bracket again, spawn index, close that line. So now we actually have a current hazard and a current spawn point. So now all we need to tell this to do now is to spawn whichever the current object is to whichever the current spawn point is. So we do this via an instantiate function. If you haven't looked at the other videos, an instantiate function is essentially something creating an instance of it, like you instantiate a bullet from a gun. Obviously you don't make lots of individual bullets, you just make one bullet and instantiate copies of it. So open bracket on the end of that, we need to tell it what object to instantiate. So that would be current hazard, comma, where is it spawning from? So that's now going to be current spawn point, because we don't actually know which spawn point it's going to come from yet. Dot transform, because it needs to reference whereabouts that object is. So close bracket, close the line. So we've got our spawn function in now, which is good. Now what we need to add in, we need to add something to tell it to spawn, because it doesn't. You know, we could put it in the awake function, it would do it once. We could put this update function back in, it would do it once a frame. We don't want it to do either of them. So what we need to do is we need to set a timer. And we do this with an IE numerator. So if we do this, type IE, you can type it all if you want, or just go to IE numerator. This is going to be our timer, remember. So this isn't in a function, this is on its own. I'm going to call this spawn timer. I'm going to open bracket, close bracket, open curly brace, close curly brace. So it works as a function, but it's a timer function. So to start with, yield, return new. So this is essentially going to tell it how many seconds to wait before it does what it's supposed to do in the timer. So our timer is essentially going to wait so many seconds, do the spawn function, and then it's going to start the timer again. So we're now going to put for wait 4 seconds, so telling it how long it should wait. Obviously we've got our cooldown timer up here, or how long it should wait for. We've got to be a float, which this is, so we're just going to put spawn cooldown in there. Close the bracket, close the line. Right, so after that, wait so many seconds, and then spawn. So that is going to wait for so many seconds, and then do this here. But we just reference it in there. We could put all of this in there, but it's just so much easier to have it in its separate thing there. And then at the end, it's done it. We need to start it again. So if we go to start coroutine, because a timer is a coroutine, open bracket, right, it needs to know which routine, which timer, so that would be our spawn timer. Then you want to open bracket, close the bracket again, finish the line. So technically speaking, this all works, apart from one small problem. It's never telling it to actually start this. Yeah, at the end of it, it tells it to do it again, but we're never telling it to start it at the beginning. So that's what we do in the awake function. We copy this line from here and paste it into there. So Control C, Control V. Now this should be all done. So if we save this, we go back into here. I go into my generator object where we put this in before. Spawn cooldown, we need to set that. I'm going to put that down as 1 just so we see it happen. Hazards and spawn points, we're going to set both of these to 3. So if you click on size, type 3, press enter if you want. Now we've got 3 objects we can put it in. So I'll do the spawn points first because they're here. So spawn point 2, spawn point 1, and spawn point 0. As I said before, ints don't go from 1 upwards, they go from 0 upwards, and that's how a list works. If you remember at the start, we also made 3 different hazards. So if I go into generator, and I'll put these in here. So we should see hazard, hazard 1, hazard 2. So now, this should all work. These are set to move across at -5. We've got our spawn points in here. So let's see if this works. So we should be starting. There we go. Green, yellow, yellow, green. We ain't got a red one. There we go. There's this red one. So we've got 3 different objects spawning from 3 different locations. So this is quite a complex one. It can be made more complex. If you return to the first generator script, we do some stuff with randomizing time. You could add that in there. You'd have to be careful with balancing and making sure it's actually possible to complete your game. But here we go. This is what we've got. Random objects, random spawns, and a whole lot of fun. So there we have it. We have a generator script. We've got 3 different levels of generator script, from a fairly simple one, few lines of code, to something like this where everything's just randomized and a big barrel of laughs. So yep, I hope you enjoyed that. The next thing we'll be looking at is score and potentially a menu system. So make sure to come back. But there we go, generators, we've done them. Nice one.